I'm glad to be able to visit you in Colombo, Sri Lanka, and thank you very much for agreeing to answer a few questions on your views on computers and the information technology revolution.
Fine. I will answer them or evade them as the case may be.
What effect do you see in the accelerating development of information technology on the gap between the rich and the poor?
Well, the gap between the rich and the poor, which is largely because of technology, could be narrowed because equipment is becoming cheaper, and there's no reason why every village in Asia and Africa shouldn't have at least one sort of workstation so the people would come to it. You don't need one in every house or in every hut, but the technology should be available. Whether it's will be or not is another question, depending on politics and economics. But I think that technology, information technology, can reduce the gap. But then it depends on us, will we use it for that purpose?
Do you agree that in the internet age, information should be free, with all of its implications concerning intellectual property and creative work?
Well, more and more seems to be getting free these days, including telephone calls. And the argument about intellectual property, of course, hits me in my pocketbook. If everything was free and you weren't paid for anything, no one would do anything. So there has to be some arrangement for the people who create things should be rewarded in some way, hopefully not in .com stock.
What nightmare scenarios, if any, do you foresee for the use of computers?
Well, I think we're already involved in one nightmare scenario. I mean, how much of one's day is now spent on email? I find this absorbing more and more of my time. I haven't had it cut into my sleep yet, but I fear that's inevitable. So that's something which is already beginning to devour our time. And you know, we no longer have any time to think, to meditate. And that's a real problem. Sort of one tends to react to whatever is happening, but we don't have time to sit back and think, well, what should I do? What's the best thing to do?
The promise of technology has often been to lessen the workload of human beings and provide a life of leisure. However, in many ways, people are working harder than ever. Do you think this trend will be finally reversed in the next half-century?
I can't see any reversal. It does seem to be continuing, but it'll hit a limit. I mean, we can't work more than 24 hours a day. I'm terrified that someone will invent a drug or something that will enable us to stay awake permanently. I think that would be the last invention that anyone would ever make. I think we do need sleep, if only to sort out our day's activities retrospectively and to download the junk that's accumulated in our hard disks during the day. But information technology and computers, of course, enable us to do so much more. But because of that, we tend to do much more. I've sometimes said that far from being labor-saving or time-saving devices, computers enable us to do 10 times as much in twice the time.
The time machine portrays a future where the human descendants become physically, mentally, and morally diminished because they no longer found challenges to overcome. Do you see this scenario as plausible over the next 50 years or even farther out?
Well, the time machine was Wells' masterpiece, and I have a signed portrait of him just above my head at the moment. And he imagined the world dividing into these two species almost. The effete creatures who lived on the surface and were looked after, and all their needs were provided by the workers underground at a terrible cost because they eventually were eaten by the workers underground. It's a terrifying scenario, and it could be possible. At least but I don't think it will happen because the division is going to be between humans and robots, not between two species of humans.
Until we are technically more capable than we are now, do you see any bans that make sense for the use of information technology?
I can see good arguments for trying to impose a ban on certain areas, but I don't think it'll be practical because whatever happens, some ingenious guy in a garage somewhere will do it anyway.
As mankind evolves through the stages of hunting, gathering, agriculture, industries, services, information, what is the next stage on the horizon? That is, when we have exhausted the information stage by robots or AI, during all the mental and physical work that we do now, what would come next?
Well, we can never exhaust information. The universe is infinite in as far as information content is concerned. In fact, you can take a tiny little bit of knowledge, say mathematics, and even that area is infinite. You can never exhaust that. And so there's no danger of running out of challenges or interesting things to do. But I'm afraid that virtual reality, which is going to be the next big thing, is going to be so much more attractive than real life that people just won't make the effort to do these things. They just lie back and enjoy inputs into their brains, and that could very well be the end of the human race. That's an old idea in science fiction, of course. And Lawrence Manning wrote a story, again, more than 50 years ago, called The City of Living Dead, which was about this ultimate stage when we're all the ultimate couch potatoes just plugged in, and our computers feed us everything we want. But then they might get fed up with doing that and then unplug us, and that would serve us right.
Do you expect the advances in information technology will shed any light on the enduring questions of God and Creator?
Well, whether God exists or who created us, of course, are the fundamental questions. And this was summed up in a famous story, I think, by Frederick Brown, must be half a century ago, when the ultimate computer is built and they ask him, is there a God? He says, now there is. This is Arthur Clarke in Sri Lanka, saying goodbye to my friend.
Thank you for this interview, and I hope we could have the opportunity to continue this dialogue at a later time.